Greetings, everybody, and welcome to another Wicked Problems. Apologies for the somewhat long delay between the last episode and this. As you can see from my background, I'm not where I normally am, and the reason for that is that we have quite simply moved, and that move has occasioned the delay in episodes. But we're back, and the good news is we're back, and we've got a wonderful guest today, Stephanie Klein. Stephanie has had a tremendous career. She's been the face of what is often seen as a faceless corporate America. She spent nearly 3 decades building Fortune 500 brands like Hallmark, United Airlines, Kraft, Alberto Culver, Coca-Cola, CBOE Global Markets, and Northern Trust, 3 times serving as Chief Marketing Officer. Nowadays, Stephanie is a certified professional coach through the Institute for Professional Excellence in Coaching, or IPEC, as well as being a certified professional coach and emotional intelligence leader of the Google-born Search Inside Yourself program. She is also a 9-year cancer survivor and a mentor with Immerman Angels, where she supports others in their cancer journeys. In 2020, Stephanie founded Mindfire Mastery to show leaders the secret power of using disruption to their advantage, to catapult them from functional to optimal. Her first book, aimed at showing high achievers the secret power of disruption to accelerate growth exponentially whilst building internal resilience, is called Waking Up on the Right Side of Wrong, and it will be published in 2021. She holds an MBA from the University of Chicago Booth School of Business, a BA in psychology from Duke University, and she's also a graduate of the Players Workshop of the Second City. I do hope you enjoy my conversation with Stephanie as much as I did. Welcome, Stephanie Klein, to Wicked Problems. It's great to have you here.
Good to be here.
I'm really interested in the book you've been writing. I wondered if you could tell us a bit more about it.
I'd be happy to, Toby. Thank you. I've been writing this book for over a year now, and the title is Waking Up on the Right Side of Wrong. And, the central theme is really about what if getting it wrong is really the secret to getting it right? My entire life, I've sort of been, I wanted to be in control. I'm a high achiever. And I've always felt like when these disruptive things happen in my life, when somebody gets sick, when there's a problem at work, when, anything goes wrong, that's like the bump in the road that wasn't meant to happen. And so I got really interested as my life has gone on, and I've dealt with a lot of disruptions, if you will, about how that really, if I look back on it, those were the things that led me to something new and better and greater. And so it's really about realizing the power that the things that we didn't expect can have to open us up to completely new perspectives. And that once you open up to that point of view, that everything that happens in life is really an experience to grow from. And, like any fairy tale story, we don't grow if there's not like the villain, the wicked witch or the big bad wolf. There's something that really gets us to rise to the challenge, if you will, and become the hero in our story. And so I think that's really waking up on the right side of wrong is really about finding that the right in the story that seems like it's wrong, but it's not over until we say it is.
It sounds like that isn't something that you always thought. Was there a specific catalytic event catalyst that led you to that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I started interviewing other people too as part of this process because I wanted to validate what my own life experience was telling me. And I've since learned a lot more related to this. But yes, there was a catalytic event to answer your question. And it actually started in my 20s. My mother was diagnosed with a very rare form of cancer. And, up until that time in my life, I basically had your typical life where, I'd gone off to school, I'd gone off to college, I'd moved to a new city and started grad school, but nothing really disruptive had happened in my life up until then. And, the doctor said there was no hope. And we went through a journey of trying to find a cure and me sort of having to dig very deep to sort of deal with the fact that I was going to lose my mother. And realizing actually not only the beauty that happened while we were going through that period in terms of connecting as a family, but how it opened me up on the back end of that to realizing how short life is, and starting to make changes that I never would have made otherwise. So, for example, I came back to Chicago and realized I wanted to find a new job. The company I was at wasn't the right culture fit for me, and it took me down a new path, and that led me to a new path. So I think that, I wouldn't wish cancer or anybody to go through that or to lose somebody they love. On the other side, I think it just wakes us up. I call it the big wake up call we didn't ask for. And so that really got me on this journey. It's been a lot longer where I've started to realize we can actually nudge ourselves to wake ourselves up if we want to on our own timetable. And that to me is where huge power comes in. But I started out with realizing that the things I didn't ask for, these wake up calls, they opened up kind of new horizons, new mountains I didn't see originally.
It sounds like it can be quite scary. Like when you start out, so if you've got a path that you've been following, it's maybe a career path or a personal development path of some sort, and then you're going, oh, this stuff, this all planned out stuff is fine, but actually there's these sort of interrupts that are happening that I've always seen as a bit of a bit troublesome, bit of a pain, a bit of sort of the wrong thing to be happening to me at this moment, an annoyance almost.
Right.
And now, actually, you're not saying that. You're saying, I'm going to pay attention to those annoyances and they're going to help me. That's a big shift mentally, isn't it?
It's a huge shift. It's a huge shift. And actually, Toby, I think that we're getting little whispers all the time when things aren't right. And I think, this mindfulness has really been exploding. And I've become a mindfulness emotional intelligence teacher through the Search Inside Yourself program, born at Google, and a coach. But mindfulness is really about like stepping back and becoming aware of what's going on. And that might be, we often listen to our minds at the exclusion of listening to our bodies and what's really going on. And so I think a lot of people experience with stress, and certainly we're going on this is an unprecedented time with the global pandemic right now. And we're dealing with a lot of stress and things that we didn't expect, right? And so what ends up happening a lot of times is you hear these stories of people, and I've interviewed so many of them where, I had heart palpitations, I couldn't breathe, and I went to the hospital, or I got cancer, or, my back went out. But all these problems happen. And what it is oftentimes is our bodies know early on what's going on, and they're nudging us, they're giving us little whispers. But if we're not actually listening, if we're not like getting still and listening to what's going on, we get these big wake up calls. And that's really what can lead us to making huge changes in our lives, because it's time. And that's really the new paradigm shift that I've taken. So for my own example, even though my mother had died of cancer and it was in my late 20s, I didn't really expect cancer to come knocking on my door. But in my 40s, it did. And I was leading a global team, and I was working all the time, and I didn't even have time, I thought, for a doctor's appointment, let alone to battle cancer. And I found a lump, and I actually didn't go to the doctor till after my vacation was over, because I needed my vacation. But afterwards I went to the doctor and found out it was chilling. It was malignant. Like I had to move into action. It was an aggressive stage 4 cancer. And so while I didn't think I had time to stop and even go to the doctor, of course I did, right? Of course I did. And I learned how to let go of some things that really, first of all, I didn't control everything that I thought I did. And I learned how to let go and let my team run with things so that I could step back and go to the doctor. I learned to ask for help. My daughter stepped up in a way that I didn't think she was ready to do, and she felt more valued. And I gave myself compassion. So, sometimes these things teach us gifts that it really changed how I operated as a leader going forward. And actually changed how I showed up for myself. Working out and taking care of myself became a key priority. I didn't let myself go to the bottom anymore. So these things that are really opening us up to what can happen, what needs to happen. But sometimes I needed to get shaken. For me, I wasn't listening.
So it sounds like quite a big, scary, not very pleasant catalyst, big wake up call. and that sort of led you down this road of, okay, actually I need to be a bit kinder for myself, find more time for me, do what I need to do. Actually, all this time where I'm just thinking, stress, important. But now I actually got to carve out some time because you got this cancer. You got to work out how to deal with it. And as you said, rely on other people more. And that's great that it empowered your daughter a bit and gave her a sense of, I can't remember the term you used, but a sense of, kind of, empowerment, if that's the right word. And,
yeah.
Or authority that she hadn't had before, or responsibility. But one thing strikes me is that how do you how do you get this message across to people who haven't had that wake up call, right? So somebody who is in the position that you were in before you had your wake up call, because it feels like that would be the time for them to hear it to take action.
Yes, yes. You're absolutely right. And that's why I'm writing the book. I don't want a lot of the people, when I went into the Search Inside Yourself teacher's course, the joke the CEO says is everybody's gone through an existential crisis that's led them there, that's kind of woken them up to this more mindful path and really taking care of themselves. And what this book to me is a way to start to, in a bite-sized way, kind of open people up to listening, to kind of maybe to listening to themselves, and you can do that in many ways, certainly meditation is one form of doing that. But journaling is another thing. I've been a journaler since I was 11. And there's ways we can journal to really open ourselves up and listen. In any event, the book for me is my way to, I'm really writing it for somebody probably 10 to 15 years before where I am right now, who's on this stress success cycle and is working hard and is a high achiever, right? And so, in some ways you're never done. There's always the next goal. There's always the next thing to do. And you're doing your best to balance it all. And probably, it's funny, I've been working on this before the pandemic hit, but now it feels like it's such an important time because we're all facing this wake up call together. We're going to have many other ones that are very individual and people are going through many different situations. And my heart goes out to so many. But every single one of us is learning to adapt to what's going on now and realizing that whatever we planned, whatever we thought 2020 was going to be, it's not, right? And so I think there is this global feeling that, life can change in a minute. And this really is an opportunity for us to figure out a better way. And people are tapping into more creativity now. You're seeing, sourdough bread baking everywhere, and all these really creative ways of delivering things in new ways that we have to do. So anyway, this book, long-winded answer, but this book is my way of trying to let people know how to listen sooner. And I've broken it down into kind of 4 stages and 8 tools, if you will, or 8 principles that to guide people through in my book, how to get from listening to thriving, focus to thriving. And
it's not just the book, is it? Because I think, if I've understood right, I heard you say Search Inside Yourself, which is the mindfulness program that has its roots in Google and brings together neuroscience and emotional intelligence, along with various other aspects of mindfulness, which sort of implies to me that you're also coaching and using the principles that you're discussing in your book in your coaching practice.
Yes.
Is that right? Okay,
that's right.
Yeah, tell me more.
Well, so what I'm really excited to do right now is help to inspire change from wherever people are. And so the beauty of the Search Inside Yourself course paired with coaching is that you can really help people get a strong sense of where to start and kind of bring them through the different stages of emotional intelligence. And I've now actually been doing seminars and courses for C-suite executives to, booth MBAs, and doing bits and pieces of it. But, what I'm excited about is when we actually educate and we bring people through experiences, they get a sense of what it feels like to get focused, to get really still, to get clarity on what they want, and then to start adapting. That's the second stage. Basically, focus, adapt, stretching, and then thriving. And so my courses have been very much framed around that. And then with coaching, I can help people on a very individual level then actually make changes, because it's much easier to know what to do. It's much harder to actually do it, right? It happens when we actually make a decision and decide we're going to commit to something and actually take action and do it, become accountable for the results. So the coaching allows me to really work with people from wherever they are and help get them to where they want to go. And ultimately, and I think this is really interesting because as a leader in corporate America for 30 years, I'd taken a lot of leadership courses, but it often was about how we inspire others and what we do or what we say to, thinking externally about others versus starting first inside ourselves. And so really getting clear on who we are and bringing that authenticity to ourselves and getting really aware and managing ourselves is a really important first step. So I enjoy educating people and then pairing that with the coaching. And my book is a way of basically bringing that into a little package, right? To kind of help people see these 4 stages of focus, adapt, stretching, and thriving. And then the 8 principles that with exercises embedded in it that they can start to give them a taste of how this works and how they can apply it and apply it for different changes, right? And I think that there's the big wake-up calls that we talked about that we didn't plan. But I think what's really excited me on this journey is realizing that we have the power to accelerate this change at any point in time. To your point, Toby, that we shouldn't have to wait for the big thing that we didn't, the big eruption that we don't plan for, but instead we can say, wow, I'm not feeling fulfilled in my work. I used to, but not anymore. Or maybe it's your relationship that you're feeling needs to evolve. Maybe you're ready for whatever it might be, that you can actually go through a process to really get focused, adapt, innovate around new ideas of what you can do, and then really thrive.
And I'm wondering if when you do this work with people, and let's say somebody who is, on that stress cycle where they've just got, a million things on their plate, and it feels like it's never going to go, or it's almost, you're just chipping away, but as fast as you chip, somebody's throwing more down on you. And then when you work with those people, I'm really interested in how do they change, but also how does their productivity change? Because I'm guessing that actually there is a change, and I'm suspecting it's positive. But I think I'd love to hear that from you if you've got anything on that one.
Yeah, how do people change? I always start with this assessment that we do, and it's a leadership assessment, and it starts by really helping somebody get a really good sense of how they're showing up right now in terms of their attitudes, their perceptions and beliefs. And so they, especially on a good day, how do you operate when everything's going well and you can be, 100% Toby, and you're not stressed and technology isn't, wigging you out or anything like that. How do you show up? And then when you are stressed, what does that look like? And so we start there because, there's a lot of different assessments that help you understand sort of how you might be, what the gifts are that you brought to the world and how you make the most of that. But this is really about sort of like your energy. And a lot of people are depleted because they're just running at 1,000,000 miles a minute and they're never getting enough done. And so it really starts to get at how you're showing up. Again, when things are going well and when they're not, and these little, we call them low-grade fevers, these things that might be really subconscious that you don't even know that are getting in your way and holding you back. So I love starting there because we can really get a sense of what a person would be at their optimal, right? Because everybody is here with unique gifts. And especially if you're a high achiever, you want to keep growing and learning and getting to that optimal potential. I'm working with an executive level person now who's been, he's on the executive committee. He wants to keep learning and growing. And especially in this time right now to learn to lead in a more empathic way. And so, how do we get a sense of where the highest level is that we can go, what our big potential is, and then what's getting in the way that we might not even be aware of? Because we carry things around with us from every experience from childhood. And so part of this work is actually looking at things that you might not realize are tripping you up, holding you back when we don't know something, when we're uncertain, when we're not really confident in what the path forward is. What often happens, to your question on productivity, Toby, is we don't do anything.
Yeah, so there's a kind of false sense of productivity. I think this is where I was going, right? So if I do, then it feels like there's a lot of productivity happening, but in fact maybe it's not that productive. And when I stop, think, try and step back and empty my mind and then come back to it, that actually might be more productive longer term. I might get more things of value done, even if it's less things in aggregate. Does that make sense?
It makes a ton of sense. And so a lot of times we actually do this both in the Search Inside Yourself course, and I do this work with my private clients as well and coaching. But it's so important that we get a sense of what our values are, and those can change over time. Like having balance with my family was much more important when my daughters were younger. Now they're off on their own and as adults, and so that family value, while it's still there to a degree, freedom is more of my value now, and really being able to learn and grow in ways that feed me. So values can sort of adapt over time, but there's some core values, and it's important to get really grounded on what those are, because when we don't know, then we can chase a lot of things, to your point, on a to-do list, and try to knock off a lot of activities and not feel a sense of satisfaction and fulfillment when we do, no matter how many things that we knock off. But if we're doing something that is truly aligned with our values, then it's anchored. It's anchored to something that matters. And when we make progress on that and we keep showing up for that, we do feel a sense of fulfillment. And what's really interesting about motivation is if it is aligned with your values, and you put it out there in the world and you work on it, you feel productive even if you don't have an end result. Like I've been working on this book for over a year. And so in some ways I can say I don't have a published book just yet, so it's not productive. But it is because it's aligned with my values and my mission about inspiring change in people and helping them, get to that next level and play on their own terms. And it's all part of my value system. So if it takes a little longer, that's okay. I keep showing because it's aligned with my values. And that's really important. And a lot of people don't give themselves the benefit of doing that, of asking those questions, especially since we work in this very, we're often taught this very linear path, right? We go to school, we get a job, we keep trying to move up the ladder, and so it is very much about sort of what's that next thing right in front of us, as opposed to really taking a step back and saying, maybe at a certain point in time, if you look at your values, there's sort of a new path for you.
It really does make sense, and because I think. Yes, you can keep climbing the mountain, but if you don't take oxygen with you, eventually you'll run out of air and just fall off, right? So, and also, if you can look at life as being about how high can I climb, or you can look at life as what values do I want to achieve, and have I invested enough of me and my time in a positive way to achieve those values, and not just the values that maybe I perceive society thinks I ought to achieve.
Right. And actually, analogy is a great one, Toby, because I think a lot of us look at everything, we're climbing this mountain. We know our mountain and we're climbing it. And I think the value of realizing that we can jump off that mountain. I mean, I walked away from the C-suite 2 years ago to go down this new path. I mean, I basically left that mountain and I started climbing another one. And it was hard, but it really feels good. But there are new mountains, and sometimes there's new paths on a mountain. And so sometimes it is just kind of taking a step back and getting some perspective too. So we're not so narrow focused on where we've been.
That must have been scary. And then so the cancer must have been scary. And then walking away from a C-suite job, which is, you said it yourself, it was a a leadership job with and I imagine the perks were good and the salary was good and the kudos was good and all the rest of it. And to leave all of that is quite a scary thing, right? And then to sit down and write a book is, it's no mean feat to do it. So kudos to you for that.
Thank
you. And I'd be interested, actually. You said it's not published yet, but you are going to publish it. It is on the route to be published. And,
it is.
And when it is, we'll definitely include the link so that people can go and buy it who are interested. Just remind us of the name again.
Waking Up on the Right Side of Wrong.
Waking Up on the Right Side of Wrong. And do you have, just in case anybody's interested and would like to sort of tap more into what it is that you're doing, do you have a website that they could go to that you could tell us about?
I do. It's mindfiremastery.com. So MINDFIRE, those two words together, mastery.com. And if you go on the website and you'd like to learn more about it, there's a way for you to set up a brief call with me, and I'm happy to walk you through sort of this assessment that I do, and see if that would be of good use, because it really does the book is gonna help really open up this world, but the assessment is very personalized around you and where you are right now. So it's just a beautiful place to start. I also have a free masterclass on my website, so people can take advantage of that or download our resources. So all of that is available.
Oh, great. So they can actually go on your website, do a free class, take an assessment that gives them some insights and some I guess, feedback. And then they can also just reach out to you and have a quick chat and say, well, this all looks very interesting and I love what's happening, or, so how can we, you can give them some advice basically and help them move forward.
Well, to clarify, the assessment is something that if it seems to make sense, then there's a cost to the assessment, and then I actually do a master debrief with them, and we do a debrief session. So that's something we could do. But there's free resources on the site, and the master class is free. But if they want to do something much more individualized and tailored, we can talk about that.
But that's great, because it means that they can dip their toe and they can see what it's all about, and then they can decide for themselves whether they're going to take it forward or not. But they get, at least people get a sort of an overview and a feeling for it and a sense of it. And I think you said earlier that part of what you do is steeped in, or at least part of what you do is steeped in the Search Inside Yourself program. And I think maybe if we can just spend a moment on that, just explain to people where that fits in.
Yeah, so you did a nice job sort of setting it up earlier. It was born inside Google, and it is a program that is based in mindfulness and follows the Daniel Goleman and seminal book on emotional intelligence, with the steps of self-awareness and self-management and empathy and interpersonal social skills and compassion. And so it's really a wonderful program, but I think what makes it really special is that it's very experiential. So it's not about just, pouring information at somebody. It really is about people working in groups and individually to experience all these different stages. So you really leave, even in a 2-day program, which is now delivered online, and we can do it in 6 or 8 sessions, you change over that time. When I took it myself, I think for me, what really opened me up was this notion of empathy and really being able to tap into that. And I was immediately able to listen in different ways. In my own family, it changed my relationship with my brother, with my daughter. It really, right away, just really empathetic listening can really be transformational. And it's packaged in a way that really, it kind of brings East meets West together. There's some age-old mindfulness wisdom that's part of this, but it's packaged in ways that can be integrated in your life in, under 2 minutes, you could bring it into meetings and you can use it in your daily life in really practical, accessible ways.
Yeah, it makes sense. And I think what's really nice about this conversation that we've had is that here's somebody who used to be in leadership in corporate America, which I think for many people is, if you'll pardon the term, but a bit faceless, right? It's this corporate thing. It's over there and there's people high up and, we're the masses and whatever. And here's somebody who's been in that position going, empathy is a good thing. And we here's some tools and, and actually, we do need to just stop being, it's healthy not to be full train steaming ahead, but actually sometimes to stop and have a look around at the surroundings.
And it's funny, we often think we don't have time. Like, and I mentioned that before, we don't have time to stop, right? We're being productive. But I mean, I think anybody who's worked in corporate America realizes that while we're trying to be productive, things get mucked up all the time and things get stopped. And, and what ends up happening is this happens because there's misunderstandings, because people don't feel valued, because they're not, it comes down to people oftentimes and our relationships. And so while we think we're being productive because we're clicking off the things on our to-do list, or at least we have the optics that we are, it really, if we're not really connecting with people, we're really not getting the best from our teams. And, one quick story from Google, when they were developing this program, we know that they're great at analytics, right? And they did this really robust study internally at Google. They looked at the best teams that they had, the ones that were performing at highest levels of productivity. And they said, what makes the best team? Let's look at this analytically and do, and look at the algorithms and the correlations and really see what are the factors that underlie the best teams. And they had all these hypotheses. They thought it was going to be, the best leader, or, having the right mix of people in terms of different styles and things like that. And they had all these hypotheses, but what they ended up finding really surprised them. And it was that the number one factor for these best teams was actually psychological safety. It was people in those teams feeling like they could speak their truth, and there wouldn't be negative repercussions, that they could really bring their full selves, and that they could feel a sense of safety and trust. And those were the best teams, really. And that really speaks to why diversity and inclusion is so important, because when people can show up and feel safe, they can operate at their best. They can be the most creative. They can really say the things that need to be said and really prevent problems from happening before they happen.
I think that's really important. And that whole, that whole being able to be, feel that you can, that your contribution will be valued, even if it's, even if your suggestion isn't necessarily taken up, but that still the contribution has been valued. And maybe it's not taken up because just right now isn't the right time, or other suggestions were made by other people in the team who have every right to make to do the same thing, right? Make their suggestions, and amongst you all, you discussed it and you came to the conclusion that actually this other one was the one that everybody wanted to do, including yourself, but your contribution was still valued. And I think that's the key, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Stephanie, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on here. I'm really grateful to you for taking the time out of your busy schedule and your book writing. And I really look forward to this one going up. And I hope that I'm sure people will really enjoy it. We're going to put under the page that this one will appear on, we will put your details of your website. When the book's available, we'll put for pre-order or whatever, we can put the links to that. So, but in the meantime, if anybody wants to reach out to you, they're free to go to the website and do that. Yeah?
Terrific.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Toby. It's a pleasure to be here.